Captain Jake Morrison stared at his scanner screen and couldn't believe what he was seeing. The massive ship floating in the dark space ahead of them was bigger than anything he had ever seen before. It was at least 3 times larger than the biggest Earth warships, and it looked like it was made from materials that didn't exist in any known part of the galaxy. "Emma, are you seeing this?" Jake called to his science officer, Lieutenant Emma Clark. She was hunched over her instruments, her face glowing green from the display lights. "Captain, this is incredible," Emma said, her voice shaking with excitement. "The ship is giving off energy readings, but they're unlike anything in our databases. It's almost like the ship is alive, but not in a biological way, more like it's sleeping and dreaming." Jake had heard stories about this ship for years. Every spacer in 17 star systems knew about the vessel they called the Reaper. It had been floating in the Kessler Nebula for over 50 years, and nobody had ever successfully boarded it and returned to tell the tale. The Zephyrian Empire had sent 3 different teams to explore the ship. The first team never came back. The second team returned screaming about nightmares and visions. The third team came back, but they were all completely insane. The crystal beings called the Veloth had tried next. Their best technicians, people who could talk to machines with their minds, had fled the ship after only 10 minutes inside. They refused to say what they had seen. Even the robot race known as the Kronos Collective had failed. They had sent their most advanced exploration units to study the ship. Every single robot had shut down the moment they tried to connect to the ship's computer systems. When the collective finally retrieved their units, the robots' memory banks were completely empty. But Jake was desperate. His salvage company was failing badly. They owed money to everyone, and their creditors were getting impatient. This mysterious ship was their last chance to find something valuable enough to save their business. The bounty on any working technology from the vessel was enough money to set up Jake and his crew for the rest of their lives. "Danny, how are our systems looking?" Jake asked his engineer, Danny Rodriguez. "All green, Captain," Danny replied from his position at the engineering station. "But I have to tell you, this feels like a really bad idea. Every story about this ship ends with people dying or going crazy. Lisa, what's your take on this?" Jake asked his security chief, Lisa Barnes. Lisa was checking her weapons and scanning the mysterious vessel through the targeting system. "The ship's not showing any aggressive behavior, Captain. No weapons powered up, no targeting systems active. But something about it makes me nervous. It's too quiet." As their small salvage ship, the Aurora's Hope, moved closer to the massive vessel, strange things began to happen. Lights that had been dark for decades suddenly started flickering on in sequence along the ship's hull. It was as if the ship was waking up after a long sleep. "Captain," Emma called out, her voice filled with wonder, "look at the docking bay." Jake turned to look at the main screen. The enormous docking bay doors, which had remained sealed shut for 50 years, were slowly opening. The movement was smooth and deliberate, not like automated systems responding to their approach, but more like someone inside the ship was manually opening the doors to welcome them. "That's impossible," Danny said, staring at his readings. "The ship hasn't shown any signs of active crew for decades. How are those doors opening?" "I'm picking up a transmission," Emma announced suddenly. "It's very faint, and it's not in any language our computers recognize. But Captain, this is going to sound crazy, but I feel like I can almost understand it." Jake listened to the strange sounds coming through their communication system. The transmission was definitely artificial, clearly from some kind of computer or robot. But there was something about the rhythm and tone that seemed familiar. It reminded him of someone trying to speak a language they had only heard but never learned. "Can you clean up the signal?" Jake asked. Emma worked at her controls for several minutes. "I'm trying, but every time I filter out the static, the meaning seems to slip away. It's almost like the message is designed to be understood by intuition, rather than translation." The Aurora's Hope moved slowly toward the open docking bay. As they got closer, more lights began activating throughout the massive ship. Corridors that had been dark for decades were suddenly glowing with soft blue light. The ship's external sensors were clearly tracking their movement, but not in a threatening way. It was more like the ship was curious about them. "Captain, I'm reading atmosphere in the docking bay," Danny reported. "Temperature and pressure are within human normal ranges." "How is that possible? The ship's been dead for 50 years. "Maybe it wasn't as dead as everyone thought," Jake replied. "Emma, any theories?" "The ship might have some kind of advanced artificial intelligence that's been in hibernation mode," Emma said. Our approach could have triggered automatic revival systems. But Captain, if that's true, then we need to be very careful. An AI that's been alone for 50 years might not be stable. As they entered the docking bay, Jake could see that the space was enormous. Their ship looked like a tiny toy inside the vast chamber. The walls were covered with symbols and markings that didn't match any known alien writing systems. But despite the alien nature of everything around them, Jake felt strangely comfortable, like he was being welcomed home after a long journey. Docking clamps are engaging automatically, Danny announced. Captain, the ship's systems are interfacing with ours, but not in an invasive way. It's more like it's asking permission. Let it help us dock, Jake decided, but keep all our defensive systems ready just in case. The docking process was smoother than anything Jake had ever experienced. The mysterious ship's systems guided the Aurora's Hope into position with perfect precision, then sealed the docking bay and pressurized it with breathable atmosphere. Atmospheric analysis complete, Emma reported. It's not just breathable, Captain. It's perfect. Better than our ship's recycled air. Jake stood up from his captain's chair and looked at his small crew. Well, team, we've made it further than anyone else. The question now is whether we're brave enough to actually go aboard. Or stupid enough, Lisa muttered, checking her sidearm one more time. Only one way to find out, Jake said, heading toward the airlock. Let's go make history. As the crew prepared to board the mysterious vessel, none of them could have imagined that they were about to become the first beings in 3 million years to pass a test that would determine the future of the entire galaxy. Jake stepped through the airlock and onto the mysterious ship, followed closely by Emma, Danny, and Lisa. The moment his boots touched the deck, the corridor ahead of them lit up with a soft, welcoming glow. The lights didn't just turn on all at once. Instead, they activated in a sequence that clearly showed them which direction to walk. Well, that's not creepy at all, Danny said, his voice echoing slightly in the wide corridor. It's like the ship is trying to lead us somewhere specific. The walls around them were smooth and curved, made from a material that looked like metal but felt warm to the touch. Strange symbols were carved into the surfaces, glowing faintly with the same blue light that illuminated their path. Jake tried to study the symbols, but every time he focused on one, it seemed to shift and change before his eyes. Emma, are you recording all of this? Jake asked. Every second, Captain, Emma replied, holding up her portable scanner. But the readings are strange. The symbols appear to be some kind of adaptive display system. They're changing based on who's looking at them. As they walked deeper into the ship, they noticed that the gravity felt perfectly normal, and the air was fresh and clean. Danny checked his environmental readings constantly, shaking his head in amazement. Captain, this ship has been empty for 50 years, but all the life support systems are working perfectly, Danny reported. Not just working, but working better than anything we have on Earth. The air is cleaner than what we breathe on our own ship. They came to a large chamber, with multiple corridors leading off in different directions. In the center of the room stood a circular platform with what looked like a control panel. As they approached, the panel lit up with more of the shifting symbols. I think it wants us to interact with it, Emma said, reaching toward the panel. The moment Emma's hand touched the surface, the room filled with a low humming sound. The platform they were standing on began to glow, and suddenly the 4 crew members found themselves separated by walls of light that appeared from nowhere. Jake, Emma, Lisa called out, but her voice sounded distant even though she was only a few feet away. Don't panic, Jake called back. Everyone stay calm. I think this is some kind of test. Jake found himself alone in what looked like a smaller version of the chamber they had just been in. The walls around him were covered with screens showing images that changed constantly. He saw pictures of space battles, planets being destroyed, and civilizations rising and falling. But he also saw images of hope. Beings from different species working together, worlds being healed and technologies being used to help rather than harm. A voice spoke to him, not through his radio but directly inside his mind. The voice was old and tired but also filled with a deep curiosity. Human, the voice said, show me what makes your species different from all the others who have stood in this place. Meanwhile, in his own separate space, Danny faced a different challenge. The walls around him showed technical diagrams and engineering problems that seemed impossible to solve. Suddenly, sparks flew from a control panel near him and alarms started blaring. He had to choose between fixing the problem, which might take time he didn't have, or leaving immediately to save himself. Danny didn't hesitate. He rushed to the damaged panel and started working to repair it, even though smoke was filling the air around him. If this ship has been waiting 50 years for someone to fix it, then I'm going to fix it, he said to himself as he worked. Lisa found herself in what appeared to be a military command center. Screens around her showed a battle in progress, with ships being destroyed and people dying. A computer voice asked her to make tactical decisions. Should she sacrifice a few ships to save many, or risk everything to try to save everyone? There has to be a third option, Lisa said, studying the displays carefully. There's always a third option. She began inputting commands, trying to find a solution that would save as many lives as possible, even if it meant taking greater risks. Emma's test was different from the others. She found herself in a laboratory filled with scientific equipment and data that was far beyond anything human science had achieved. The computer presented her with a puzzle. She could gain access to unlimited knowledge, but only if she agreed to use it for her own benefit rather than sharing it with others. Knowledge belongs to everyone, Emma said firmly. I won't accept any discovery that I can't share with my species and others who need it. Back in the central chamber, Jake continued to face questions from the mysterious voice. Images flashed around him showing the history of the galaxy, civilizations that had risen to great heights only to destroy themselves through war and greed. Your species is young, the voice said. You have barely left your homeworld. Why should you be trusted with power that has corrupted beings far older and wiser than you? Jake thought carefully before answering. Because we're not wiser, he said. We make mistakes, lots of them. But we learn from them, and when we see someone in trouble, we help them, even if it costs us something. We don't help because we're wise. We help because it's the right thing to do. The voice was silent for a long moment. Show me an example. Suddenly, Jake was viewing scenes from human history. He saw soldiers sharing their rations with enemy prisoners. He saw doctors treating patients during epidemics, knowing they might die from the disease themselves. He saw people jumping into freezing water to save strangers, and firefighters running into burning buildings to rescue people they had never met. We're not perfect, Jake continued. We fight wars, we make terrible mistakes, and sometimes we're selfish and cruel. But we also have this thing where we can't stand to see others suffer if we can do something about it, even when it doesn't make logical sense. The images around him shifted to show more recent events, human relief efforts after natural disasters, international cooperation in space exploration, and people from different countries working together to solve global problems. Other species are stronger than us, smarter than us, more advanced than us, Jake said. But we have something that I think is pretty rare in the galaxy. We have hope. Even when everything looks impossible, we keep believing that things can get better, and we're willing to work to make them better, even if we don't live to see the results. Suddenly, the walls of light disappeared, and Jake found himself back in the central chamber with his crew. They all looked shaken but determined. Did everyone else just go through some kind of test? Emma asked. I think we all did, Lisa replied. And I think we passed. The control panel in the center of the room lit up brighter than before, and the voice spoke to all of them at once. Humans, it said. You are the first species in 3 million years to complete the trial successfully. You have shown that you possess the qualities my creators deemed essential: individual courage, collective wisdom, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. You are ready to learn why I have been waiting. Jake looked at his crew, seeing his own mixture of excitement and fear reflected in their faces. Whatever was about to happen, he knew their lives would never be the same. The chamber around them transformed completely. The walls became transparent, and Jake and his crew found themselves surrounded by stars. But these weren't the stars they knew. The images flowing around them showed star systems that were older and more beautiful than anything in their part of the galaxy. I am Guardian Protocol 7, the voice said, and now it seemed to come from everywhere at once. For 3 million years, I have been searching for a species worthy of inheriting what my creators left behind. The space around them filled with images of a civilization unlike anything humans had ever imagined. The beings in the pictures were tall and graceful, with long limbs and faces that seemed to glow with inner light. Their cities floated in space like jewels connected by bridges of pure energy. Their ships moved through space not by burning fuel, but by bending the fabric of reality itself. My creators called themselves the architects, Guardian explained. They were builders of wonders. They could reshape planets with their thoughts, redirect the energy of stars, and create technologies that turned matter into anything they desired. Emma gasped as she watched the images of planets being transformed from dead rocks into garden worlds in a matter of days. Entire moons were hollowed out and turned into massive cities. Stars were surrounded by structures that captured their energy and distributed it to thousands of worlds. They sound incredible, Jake said. What happened to them? The images around them darkened, showing the same beautiful civilization under attack. Strange, shadow-like creatures poured out of tears in space itself, consuming everything they touched. The architect's wonderful cities crumbled as these dark beings drained them of all energy and matter. My creator's greatest achievement was also their greatest mistake, Guardian continued. They built something called Nexus Station, a massive structure that could open doorways not just to other parts of this galaxy, but to other universes entirely. They wanted to explore everything, to learn from civilizations in other realities. The images showed the construction of Nexus Station, a structure so large it dwarfed entire star systems. It was beautiful beyond description, with towers that stretched into dimensions humans couldn't even see. But when they opened the first doorway to another universe, something came through that they had never expected. The architects called them the Devourers. These beings existed only to consume organized matter and energy, turning everything they touched back into chaos and darkness. Danny watched in horror as the shadow creatures spread across the galaxy like a plague. Everywhere they went, stars went dark and planets crumbled to dust. The architects fought back with weapons that could destroy entire solar systems, but the Devourers just kept coming. The war lasted for centuries, Guardian said. My creators were builders, not warriors. They tried to fight, but how do you battle beings that exist to unmake everything you've created? How do you defeat enemies that grow stronger by destroying the very things you're trying to protect? The images showed the final days of the architect's civilization. Their beautiful cities were falling one by one. Their people were dying despite all their advanced technology. In their desperation, they made a last choice. In their final act, my creators loaded their most important knowledge and technology into 12 ships like this one. Each ship was given an artificial intelligence program to search for species that might be worthy of inheriting what the architects had learned. We were sent to different parts of the galaxy with instructions to test any intelligent species we encountered. Lisa studied the tactical displays showing the ancient war. What kind of tests? She asked. Each species was evaluated on their ability to balance individual freedom with collective responsibility, Guardian explained. The Devourers succeeded because they exploited the weaknesses in how civilizations worked together. Species that were too rigid couldn't adapt when the rules changed. Species that were too chaotic couldn't organize effective resistance. The images showed other species that had been tested over the millennia, the proud Zephyrian Empire with their perfect military discipline, but no ability to think outside their rigid command structure. The Veloth collective consciousness that could share thoughts instantly, but couldn't make individual decisions when the collective was threatened. The Kronos collective came closest to success, Guardian continued. Their logical approach to problem-solving was impressive, but they lacked something essential, the ability to make choices that didn't make logical sense. Sometimes survival requires hope instead of logic, sacrifice instead of self-preservation. Jake watched as the images showed the robot species being tested. They had solved every logical puzzle perfectly, but when faced with scenarios that required irrational courage or selfless sacrifice, they had failed completely. Your species is different, Guardian said, and the images around them changed to show scenes from human history. You are chaotic and unpredictable. You make decisions that often seem to contradict your own best interests, but you have something that none of the other species possessed. The scenes showed humans throughout history making choices that defied logic. Soldiers throwing themselves on grenades to save their comrades, doctors staying with patients during deadly epidemics, ordinary people risking everything to help strangers. You have the ability to choose hope over despair, even when hope seems impossible, Guardian explained. You can work together when necessary, but you also value individual conscience over group pressure. Most importantly, you have never learned how to surrender completely. Emma was studying the technical data flowing past them. Guardian, are you saying that the Devourers are still out there? The images around them shifted to show current star charts of their galaxy, but these charts showed things that no human had ever seen before. Dark zones where stars had gone silent, areas where space itself seemed twisted and wrong. The Devourers were not destroyed, Guardian said, and its voice carried a weight of terrible knowledge. They were only delayed. For 3 million years they have been gathering strength in the dark spaces between galaxies. Now they are beginning to return. The star charts highlighted recent events that had puzzled galactic civilization. Ships disappearing at the galaxy's edge weren't victims of pirates. Entire star systems going silent weren't natural disasters. They were the first signs that the ancient enemy was testing the galaxy's defenses. I calculate that the Devourers will return in full force within 50 of your years, Guardian announced. With the knowledge I carry, your species could prepare defenses not just for humanity but for all the civilizations in this galaxy. But the gift comes with a responsibility. Jake felt the weight of Guardian's words settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. What kind of responsibility? The architects failed because they fought alone, each species trying to protect only themselves, Guardian explained. If the galaxy is to survive the return of the Devourers, all civilizations must work together. Someone must unite them, teach them to cooperate instead of compete. The images around them showed what was possible. Human ships flying alongside Zephyrian warships. Veloth scientists working with human engineers. Even the logical Kronos Collective contributing their computational power to a galactic defense effort. The choice is yours, Guardian said. I can return you to your ship with enough technology to make you wealthy beyond imagination. Or you can accept the inheritance of the architects and take responsibility for protecting not just humanity, but all life in this galaxy. Jake looked at his crew. Emma's scientific mind was clearly racing with the possibilities. Danny was already thinking about the engineering challenges. Lisa was calculating the military implications. If we say yes, Jake asked, what exactly are we agreeing to? To become the teachers and guardians your galaxy needs, Guardian replied. To learn technologies that will seem like magic to your current science. To build alliances with species that have been enemies for millennia. To prepare for a war that will determine whether organized life continues to exist in this universe. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Jake knew that whatever decision they made in the next few minutes would change the course of history, for every intelligent species in the galaxy. Guardian, he said finally. Show us what we need to learn. Guardian's response to Jake's request was immediate and overwhelming. The chamber filled with streams of information that flowed around them like living rivers of light. Technical specifications, scientific formulas, and engineering blueprints swirled past them at incredible speed. But somehow, instead of being confusing, the information felt organized and understandable. The ship you are standing in is more than a vessel, Guardian explained. It is a complete university containing all the knowledge of the architect civilization. Medical techniques that can cure any disease, energy systems that can power entire star systems without depleting any natural resources, and terraforming technologies that can transform any dead world into a paradise. Emma reached out to touch one of the flowing streams of data, and immediately her mind was filled with medical knowledge that was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had developed. She saw techniques for regenerating damaged organs, methods for extending lifespans indefinitely, and treatments for genetic diseases that human science hadn't even discovered yet. This is incredible, she whispered. Captain, with this medical knowledge alone, we could eliminate suffering from disease across the entire galaxy. Danny was examining engineering specifications that made human technology look like stone tools. He saw designs for ships that could travel between stars in hours instead of years, space stations that could house billions of people in perfect comfort, and manufacturing systems that could create anything needed from basic materials. These power systems don't use fuel at all, Danny said, his voice filled with wonder. They tap directly into the energy that holds atoms together. A single generator the size of a baseball could power all of Earth for centuries. Lisa was studying tactical information that revealed the true scale of the threat they were facing. The data showed her how the Devourers fought, how they moved through space, and what kinds of defenses might be effective against them. Guardian, these creatures don't fight like any enemy we've ever faced, Lisa said. They don't have ships or weapons in any sense we understand. They are weapons. They consume matter and energy directly, growing stronger with everything they destroy. That is correct, Guardian confirmed. Traditional warfare is useless against the Devourers. They cannot be negotiated with, reasoned with, or frightened. They exist only to return all organized matter to chaos. Fighting them requires technologies and strategies that no single species has ever developed alone. The information streams around them shifted to show current galactic conditions. Guardian had been monitoring the galaxy for decades, watching for signs of the Devourer's return. The signs were becoming more obvious to anyone who knew what to look for. 3 star systems on the galactic rim have gone completely silent in the past year, Guardian reported, not destroyed by warfare or natural disaster, but systematically drained of all energy. The Devourers are sending advanced scouts to test this galaxy's defenses. Jake studied the star chart showing the affected areas. How long do we really have? My calculations suggest full invasion within 50 Earth years, Guardian replied. But the advanced scouting will intensify. Within 10 years, entire sectors will begin experiencing systematic attacks. The galaxy's civilizations will face a choice: unite or die separately. The flowing information condensed into more specific displays, showing what would be required to mount an effective defense. Jake saw plans for massive space fortifications, fleets of ships using technologies that didn't exist yet, and coordination between species that had been enemies for centuries. The architects left detailed plans for something called the Unity Defense Grid, Guardian explained. A network of space stations and mobile fleets that could protect the entire galaxy. But building it requires cooperation between every major civilization. Emma was studying the technical requirements. Guardian. Some of these technologies require resources that don't exist in human space. We'd need materials from Zephyrian mining worlds, energy crystals from Veloth systems, and computational support from the Kronos Collective, which is why humanity's role cannot be simply to build defenses for Earth, Guardian said. Your species must become ambassadors, teachers, and leaders in creating a galactic alliance. The architects chose humans because you have demonstrated the ability to unite different groups against common threats. Danny was looking at the construction timelines. Even with all this advanced technology, building the Unity Defense Grid would take decades. We'd need to start immediately. And we'd need every major civilization working together from the beginning. Guardian's next words carried a weight that made the chamber seem darker. There is another factor you must consider. The knowledge I carry could also be used to create weapons of incredible destructive power, technologies that could destroy planets, eliminate entire species, or tear holes in reality itself. The displays around them showed the darker possibilities. Weapons that could cause stars to collapse, devices that could poison entire solar systems, and technologies that could open doorways for the Devourers to enter the galaxy more quickly. This is why my testing was so important, Guardian continued. The wrong species given this knowledge could become a greater threat than the Devourers themselves. Power without wisdom destroyed my creators. It could destroy this galaxy as well. Lisa understood the implications immediately. You're saying that if we accept this inheritance, we become responsible not just for defending against the Devourers, but for making sure this technology isn't misused by anyone. Exactly. You would become the guardians of knowledge that could save or damn every living being in the galaxy. Jake felt the full weight of the decision pressing down on him. He looked at his crew, seeing his own mixture of excitement and fear reflected in their faces. They were just 4 humans from a small salvage operation, and they were being asked to take responsibility for the fate of trillions of beings. Guardian, you said you've been testing species for 3 million years, Jake said. In all that time, no one else passed your tests? Many species came close. The Vorthak Empire had excellent military organization. The Helian Federation showed impressive scientific advancement. The quantum monks demonstrated remarkable wisdom, but each failed in crucial ways when tested under pressure. The displays showed these other species during their testing. The Vorthak military couldn't function when their rigid command structure was disrupted. The Helian scientists refused to share their discoveries with other species. The quantum monks became paralyzed by philosophical debates when quick action was needed. Humans are not the strongest, smartest, or most advanced species in the galaxy, Guardian said, but you have consistently demonstrated 3 qualities that are essential for survival against the Devourers: adaptability, cooperation across differences, and the willingness to sacrifice for others. Emma was studying historical data about human behavior. Guardian, you've been watching our species for how long? I have monitored human development for approximately 200 of your years. I watched your species survive global wars, natural disasters, and technological challenges that destroyed other civilizations. Most importantly, I observed your space exploration efforts. The displays showed scenes from human space history, international cooperation on space stations, rescue missions to save astronauts from different countries, and joint exploration efforts that put scientific discovery ahead of national competition. When humans encountered other species, you showed curiosity rather than immediate aggression. When faced with superior technology, you sought to learn rather than destroy. When offered the choice between conquest and cooperation, you consistently chose cooperation. Danny was thinking about the practical aspects. If we agree to this, what happens next? Do we just take this ship back to Earth and announce that we're now responsible for defending the galaxy? The transition must be gradual, Guardian explained. Humanity is not yet ready for the full inheritance. You must prove yourselves capable of handling increasing levels of responsibility and technology. I will serve as teacher and guide, but the choices and actions must be yours. Jake understood that they were being offered the chance to become something more than they had ever imagined. Not just successful salvagers, but leaders in the greatest challenge any civilization had ever faced. There's one more thing I need to know, Jake said. If we fail, if we can't unite the galaxy or build adequate defenses, what happens to everyone? Guardian's response was delivered with the weight of absolute certainty. The Devourers will consume this galaxy as they consumed the Architect's galaxy. Every star will go dark, every planet will crumble to dust, and every living being will be reduced to raw energy to feed their endless hunger. This universe will become a cold, empty void. The chamber fell silent as the crew contemplated the magnitude of what they were being asked to do. Save the galaxy or watch it die. Unite ancient enemies or see them all destroyed. Become guardians of cosmic-level power or let the greatest evil in the universe run free. Jake looked at each of his crew members, seeing determination replacing fear in their eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady and sure. Guardian, we accept. Show us what we need to do. The moment Jake spoke those words, the ship around them came fully alive. Every system activated at once, filling the air with a harmonious humming that seemed to celebrate their decision. The walls became transparent, showing them the vast network of technologies and knowledge now at their disposal. The inheritance begins now, Guardian announced. But understand this. The knowledge cannot simply be downloaded into your minds. Wisdom must be earned through experience and understanding. I will teach you gradually, ensuring you develop the judgment necessary to use these gifts responsibly. The first lesson began immediately. Guardian showed them how the ship itself functioned, revealing technologies that seemed like magic, but were based on scientific principles humans had barely begun to explore. The ship didn't use engines in any conventional sense. Instead, it moved by convincing space itself to change shape around it. This vessel is now yours, Guardian explained. I suggest you name it something that reflects your mission. Jake looked at his crew. Terra's Hope, he said without hesitation. Because we're carrying hope from Earth to the entire galaxy. Emma began learning about the medical technologies first. Guardian started with simple techniques, showing her how to accelerate healing and repair genetic damage. But even these basic applications were revolutionary by human standards. Captain, I could cure every disease on Earth with just the introductory medical knowledge, Emma said, her voice filled with excitement and responsibility. Cancer, genetic disorders, even aging itself, they're all solvable problems with this technology. Danny was being introduced to engineering concepts that challenged everything he thought he knew about physics. Guardian showed him how to build materials that were stronger than anything in nature, how to create energy sources that would never run out, and how to construct machines that could repair themselves. These manufacturing techniques could end scarcity forever, Danny said, studying the flowing blueprints. We could build ships that travel between stars in days, cities that float in space, and provide unlimited clean energy to every human settlement. Lisa was learning about defense technologies that could protect not just against conventional weapons, but against threats that existed outside normal reality. Guardian taught her about energy shields that could stop anything, weapons that could target specific molecular structures, and detection systems that could see through dimensional barriers. The tactical applications are incredible, Lisa reported. But Guardian is right about the dangers. Some of these weapons could crack planets in half or destroy entire star systems. We'd need extremely careful protocols for who gets access to what. But Guardian's lessons went far beyond technology. The artificial intelligence began teaching them about the species they would need to work with, showing them the history, culture, and psychology of every major galactic civilization. The Zephyrian. Empire values honor and military tradition above all else, Guardian explained, showing them images of the proud warrior-like aliens. They will respect strength but only follow leaders who demonstrate personal courage in battle. The Veloth were completely different, crystalline beings who shared thoughts and emotions directly. They make decisions collectively and have difficulty trusting species that maintain individual privacy. You will need to be completely honest with them about your intentions. The Kronos Collective presented their own challenges. They are purely logical and will require mathematical proof that cooperation serves their interests better than isolation. Emotional appeals will be completely ineffective. Guardian spent days teaching them about dozens of other species, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and cultural requirements. Jake began to understand the enormity of the task ahead of them. How are we supposed to unite all these different species when they've been fighting each other for centuries? Jake asked. By giving them something more important to fight, Guardian replied. The Devourers represent an existential threat to every form of organized life. When species understand the true scope of the danger, most will choose cooperation over destruction. Guardian began showing them the detailed plans for what their mission would require. Phase 1 involved returning to Earth and establishing a new organization, the Terran Guardian Initiative. This would be humanity's center for gradually introducing architect technologies while building relationships with other species. Emma will lead the scientific division, Guardian explained. Your role will be to master the medical and research technologies, then begin sharing them carefully with other species. Nothing builds trust like saving lives. Emma nodded, understanding the responsibility. I'll start with techniques that clearly benefit everyone. Disease cures, life extension, genetic repair. Technologies that no species could see as threatening. Danny will head the engineering division, Guardian continued. You will learn to build the tools and infrastructure necessary for the Unity defense grid. Start with improvements to human ships and stations, then offer to help other species upgrade their technology. Danny was already thinking about the logistics. We'll need to be careful about how fast we introduce new technologies. Too much too quickly could destabilize entire economies. Lisa will train the first generation of Guardian Marines, Guardian announced. Soldiers equipped with architect technology and trained to fight threats that conventional military forces cannot handle. Lisa understood the implications. We'll need people who can work with alien allies, use technologies that don't exist yet, and face enemies that can manipulate reality itself. That's going to require a completely new kind of training. And Jake, Guardian said, your role will be the most challenging. You will become humanity's ambassador to the unknown, responsible for building the alliances that will save the galaxy. Jake felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. Guardian, I'm just a salvage ship captain. I'm not a diplomat or a politician. How am I supposed to convince ancient civilizations to trust a species that just learned to travel between stars? Because you are not a politician, Guardian replied. Politicians think in terms of advantage and compromise. You think in terms of doing what's right, regardless of the cost to yourself. That authenticity will be more persuasive than any diplomatic training. Guardian showed them the timeline they were working with. The first Devourer scouts would arrive within 10 years. By then, they needed to have established contact with major galactic civilizations and begun construction of at least the basic components of the Unity defense grid. The full defense network will take decades to complete, Guardian explained. But if we can demonstrate that effective resistance is possible, we can buy the time necessary to finish the project. As Terra's Hope prepared to leave the Kessler Nebula and return to Earth, Guardian provided them with their first tools. Communication, devices that could translate any language, small medical units that could heal most injuries, and personal protection systems that would keep them safe in hostile environments. These are training tools, Guardian explained. As you prove your ability to use them wisely, I will teach you more advanced technologies. But remember, every gift comes with responsibility. The knowledge you carry could save the galaxy or destroy it. Jake stood on the observation deck of their new ship, watching Earth grow larger on the screens as they approached home. The blue planet looked so peaceful and fragile, unaware that its children were returning with the greatest responsibility in galactic history. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Guardian asked, its ancient voice filled with something that might have been hope. Jake thought about the task ahead of them. They would have to convince Earth's governments to take the threat seriously. They would need to build relationships with alien species that had been enemies for millennia. They would have to construct defenses against threats that most people couldn't even imagine. But as he looked at his crew, Emma already planning how to revolutionize medicine, Danny designing improvements to human technology, and Lisa developing training programs for the impossible, Jake felt a familiar stubbornness rising within him. "Guardian, we're human," he said with a slight smile. "We specialize in doing impossible things. Ready or not, we'll figure it out as we go." Terra's Hope entered Earth's solar system, carrying technologies that could transform human civilization and knowledge that could save the galaxy. As Jake prepared to deliver the most important message in human history, he knew that their real adventure was just beginning. The age of humanity as galactic guardians had begun. In the dark spaces between galaxies, ancient evils stirred, sensing that their long wait was almost over. But for the first time in 3 million years, they would face an enemy that possessed something they had never encountered before, a species too stubborn to admit defeat and too hopeful to ever surrender. The final battle for the galaxy's survival would be fought by beings who had learned to hope in the darkness, to cooperate across impossible differences, and to sacrifice everything for strangers they would never meet. The Devourers had consumed countless civilizations, but they had never faced anything quite like humanity. The future of every living being in the galaxy now rested in the hands of 4 humans who had started their day planning to salvage some scrap